Right. So for the listener, who loves to get to the bottom of something quickly but thoroughly,
Mm.
we're going to distill, what makes Thiago Tequila noteworthy, and we're going to focus on those moments where things just click into place and you think, oh, okay, I get what they're doing.
Yeah.
So let's dive right in.
Okay.
Tiago Tequila describes itself as blending the authentic taste of Mexico with an innovative twist. When you first kind of hear that, what's the first thing that stands out to you?
Well, I think what's fascinating here is how they're choosing to innovate. They're taking a very well-established base, which is Reposado tequila. And I think for our listeners who are maybe less familiar with the different types of tequila, Reposado is one that has been aged for a period of time.
Okay.
And what they're doing is they're taking that Reposado and they're infusing it with these really interesting local and natural flavors,
Right.
all while maintaining a robust 40% ABV. So it's a subtle but potentially impactful way to differentiate themselves in a crowded market.
Right. So they're building on that recognized base of Reposado tequila, and then they're kind of layering in these unexpected flavors.
Exactly.
Black cherry, vanilla tamarind, and coffee. Like, that's not your typical lineup for a tequila, is it?
Not at all. And the key point I think that the summary makes is that they're doing all of this while delivering a bold flavor, but without the need for sugary mixers or calorific syrups.
Well,
So if we kind of connect this to, a broader trend, we see that there are a lot of consumers out there that are looking for more sophisticated flavor experiences in their drinks,
right.
but they're also increasingly health conscious and looking for options that aren't loaded with sugar. So Tiago seems to be speaking directly to that segment.
Right. It's kind of like, having your cake and eating it too. You can have the flavor without all that added sugar and calories.
Exactly.
When we look at how they're positioning themselves in terms of, quality and craftsmanship, it sounds like they're really hitting on the foundational elements of good tequila.
Absolutely. I mean, they make it very clear that they're sourcing their blue agave from Jalisco's rich red soil. And I love this little tidbit they threw in there, that the locals say the high red soil actually creates a sweeter, smoother blue agave tequila. It's that kind of local knowledge that adds a really nice layer of authenticity to the brand.
Oh,
It
yeah.
suggests this deep connection to the region and its traditions.
Yeah, it definitely does. And they're producing this at an award-winning distillery, which I think immediately signals that they're, really committed to upholding certain standards.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, it's bottled in the highlands of Jalisco, also known locally as Los Altos.
Oh, wow.
So from the raw ingredient to the finished product,
Yeah.
there seems to be this very deliberate, focus on quality and this regional expertise.
Right. It's not just about, the innovative flavors, but the fact that they're building those innovations on top of, a foundation of really traditional high quality tequila production.
Yeah.
And I think that dual focus is really key to their appeal to both, tequila purists and people who are looking for something new.
And those unique flavored reposados, it seems to be really at the heart of what they're offering. And we talked about the specific flavors. They chose to infuse them into a reposado. Why do you think that is? Why reposado specifically?
Well, that's a great question. Reposado, as we mentioned, has undergone a period of aging, so it tends to have a smoother character, a more nuanced flavor profile than, say, a younger Blanco tequila.
Right.
So by infusing these natural flavors into a reposado, they're probably aiming for, an even more integrated and complex taste experience.
Okay.
The aging process can kind of mellow out some of those more raw agave notes and allow those infused flavors to meld more harmoniously with that tequila base.
I see.
It's a more refined approach than just adding flavorings to a less aged spirit.
So for the listener, if you're looking for a tequila that, offers both those interesting flavors and a certain level of smoothness and complexity,
Yeah.
this focus on flavored reposados could be, a real draw.
Yeah, and it ties directly back to that modern consumer that we were talking about earlier.
Okay.
Who wants flavor complexity but doesn't necessarily want to resort to sugary cocktails?
Now, another thing that they highlight in this executive summary, and I found this really interesting, is this naturally low in sugar aspect.
Right.
And the fact that they include agavins.
Yes.
This seems to be a very conscious effort to appeal to a more, health-aware audience.
It is, and they specifically mention that tequila that's made from 100% blue agave contains agavins, which are a type of natural sugar that the body processes differently than it does regular sugar.
Okay.
And what's really interesting about this is the potential implication for blood sugar levels.
Right. They suggest that unlike, your typical sugary mixed drinks or spirits that have a high sugar content, pure tequila doesn't cause the same kind of spike in blood sugar.
Yeah.
Which could lead to less dehydration and fewer energy crashes.
Exactly. And it's an important distinction because I think there's this perception out there that tequila, is going to leave you feeling terrible the next day.
Right.
But they're actually suggesting that because of these natural occurring agavins, it may even reduce the likelihood of next-day hangovers.
Wow.
Now, it's really important to note here, we're not saying tequila is a health drink.
Right.
All alcohol should be consumed in moderation.
Of course.
But I think what's really clever is how they're framing it relative to other alcoholic beverages.
Yeah, it's like harm reduction.
Exactly.
So they're not, saying that this is good for you. They're just saying that compared to these other things,
Right.
it might be a little bit better.
Yeah. And it definitely resonates with that growing consumer interest in mindful consumption.
Absolutely. Now, the fact that their reposado is aged for 6 months in stainless steel barrels also stands out to me. Why stainless steel? How does that, contribute to the final product?
Well, aging in stainless steel as opposed to, say, oak has a really specific impact. So stainless steel is a neutral material, so it doesn't impart any of its own flavors or tannins to the tequila in the way that oak barrels would.
Okay.
So this likely allows those natural flavors of the agave and the specific infusions that they're adding to really remain prominent. They also talk about achieving this perfect golden hue and low congeners. And for the listener, congeners are essentially byproducts of fermentation that can contribute to hangovers.
Okay.
So that stainless steel aging might actually be another factor in that smoother drinking experience that they're aiming for.
Interesting.
It's about highlighting the tequila itself and the natural infusions without that added complexity that you would get from oak.
And then there's this really significant point that they make about Thiago Tequila being the only CRT-approved UK brand crafting premium flavored reposado tequila.
Right.
So for the listener, CRT stands for Consejo Regulador del Tequila.
Yeah.
For a UK-based brand, what's the weight of that approval?
Oh, that CRT approval is huge.
Okay.
So the Consejo Regulador del Tequila is essentially the official governing body in Mexico that regulates, every single aspect of tequila production, from the agave plants to the distillation process to ensure its authenticity and quality.
Wow.
So for a UK brand to not only be producing tequila, which already has those strict geographical and production requirements, but to also have their flavored reposado approved by the CRT speaks volumes.
Oh, not cutting corners.
Exactly. It signifies a deep commitment to adhering to, those Mexican standards and regulations, even when they're introducing innovative flavor profiles.
Right.
And it gives consumers this level of assurance and credibility that you just don't get with other flavored spirits on the market.
Right. They're not just, some UK company that's, inspired by tequila. They're actually operating within this official framework.
Right. They're part of that tequila family.
Now, they express, an ambition to bring a fresh, elevated perspective to the global tequila scene.
Yeah.
How do you see their approach contributing to that broader goal?
Well, I think by taking this traditional spirit like reposado tequila and thoughtfully infusing it with natural flavors, they're essentially broadening its appeal. It's a way to introduce tequila to consumers who might not have considered it before or who might have had some, preconceived notions about what tequila is.
Right.
And I think that elevated perspective comes from this really intentional focus on quality natural ingredients and creating a more sophisticated flavor experience.
And they've already achieved something pretty significant in that direction.
Yeah.
I mean, they managed to get their tequila featured on the Albert Schloss cocktail menu.
Yes.
And they beat out like 20 other brands in the process.
That is a major accomplishment.
It is. And I think for the listener who might not be familiar, Albert Schloss is a really well-known and highly regarded premium bar group in the UK.
Yeah, they've got a fantastic reputation.
They do. And for a new brand like Thiago to not only get lifted, but to be chosen over so many, established players.
Yeah.
It's a huge validation, I think, of their product.
It really is. It's a tangible piece of evidence that, what they're doing is resonating with the people who matter in the UK bar scene.
The story behind the founders, it's pretty compelling.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't just about, oh, here's a business opportunity, let's go for it.
Right.
It sounds like this really came from a place of passion.
It does. It sounds like they were genuinely on a quest to find a quality reposado tequila. They saw a gap in the UK market. They felt like a lot of the existing options were outdated or overly conventional.
Okay.
And I love that they were so committed to that authenticity that they actually achieved official recognition as a tequila manufacturer by the Mexican government.
Wow.
That's not an easy feat.
No, it's not.
And it really underscores how dedicated they are to doing things the right way.
Right. And, for the listener who might be thinking, okay, all of this sounds great, but how do I actually drink this tequila?
Yeah.
They've provided some really helpful serving suggestions.
They have. And I love that because It shows that they're not just thinking about the product, but they're thinking about how people are actually going to enjoy it. So for the tamarind flavor, they suggest pairing it with sparkling water or soda and a slice, which sounds really refreshing.
Right.
The vanilla and coffee they recommend with cola, so, very familiar and easy to make.
Easy.
And then the black cherry, they actually suggest enjoying it neat or with just one piece of ice,
Oh, wow.
which really speaks to the quality of that flavor. It's something that can be savored on its own.
Yeah, and that coffee flavor, it sounds like you could do a lot with that.
Right. They suggest that it would be great in an espresso martini, or you could make a Thiago Carajillo, which is a really popular Mexican coffee cocktail.
Okay.
So you're introducing this, new audience to this really cool Mexican drink.
Right. So they're giving the listener, those easy and accessible ways to try Thiago Tequila and really experience those unique flavor profiles.
And to me, that shows that they're not just focused on creating a product, they're thinking about building a culture around it.
Right.
They're thinking about how people are going to consume it, how they're going to share it.
And they definitely seem very excited for what's to come.
Oh, absolutely.
When you read through this executive summary, there's this really palpable sense of, anticipation.
Yeah, that final statement, Tiago is different, and you're going to want to try it. I mean, that just encapsulates their confidence and enthusiasm.
It does, yeah. And they close by saying that they'll be sharing more about their production process and arrival updates.
Yeah.
So they're really looking to connect with that audience and build excitement for their launch.
Absolutely.
So for the listener, let's bring all of this together. What are the key takeaways from this deep dive into Thiago Tequila?
Well, I think the big takeaway is that Thiago Tequila is a truly unique new player in the UK spirits market. They've managed to combine that authenticity of traditional Mexican tequila production,
Right.
as evidenced by that all-important CRT approval, with these genuinely innovative and appealing natural flavor infusions.
And the early success with a bar group like Albert Schloss, it really suggests that they have a strong product and that they understand the market.
Absolutely. And they're clearly catering to a consumer who appreciates high-quality ingredients and is looking for a lower sugar option.
Right. It's not just about the flavor. It's about how those flavors are achieved and, the kind of bigger picture.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder, given this increasing demand for both authentic and innovative flavor experiences and this growing awareness around sugar content in our beverages, how might brands like Thiago Tequila not only carve out this successful niche in the UK, but also potentially influence, the broader global spirits market?
It's a really interesting question to consider, and I think it gives our listeners something to think about the next time they're exploring, their drink options.
Absolutely. Cheers to that.
Cheers.